The BTCC is back, there are tons of changes, we've got a packed schedule, and the weather could throw a spanner into the works as well. Welcome to the second half of the season, rounds 16, 17 and 18. We're up north this time, it's time for Croft. And we'll start off with lineup changes because there are a few for the second half of the season. One Motorsport are likely to miss the next two rounds, that's due to ill health for the team owner, Steve Dudman. Wish a speedy recovery and hope that everything is okay for him and for the Brackley-based team. Now, Josh Cook will not be at Croft as a result, but Stephen Jelly will be. The reason being is because Max Hall has parted ways with Unlimited Motorsport. So Stephen Jelly is going to be taking over that TBC, that entry, and he will be driving that car for the remainder of the season, I believe, as well. They can make two changes over the course of the year. We'll get to another one that does that in a moment. But yeah, Stephen Jelly, who has been a veteran of the BTCC at this point, driven various different machines for different manufacturers. Most of his time, I think, was BMWs, is going to be helping with the further development of the Cupra Leon. And yeah, like I said, he's not going to be the only change because the car that Ronan Pearson was driving, which last time at Alton Park was driven by Finn Leslie, is going through its second and final change of the season as well. Ronan Pearson was the one who started the season, then Finn Leslie took it over, and now it's going to be Max Buxton who's going to be driving for the remainder of the season. Max Buxton has been on the junior ladder for a while, so it's not going to be too much of a surprise. You can expect the kind of pace that Finn Leslie had at Alton Park to be somewhat similar to what Max Buxton will have when he gets into the car. But yeah, it's another change that we are seeing in the BTCC. It's something similar to what we saw with the Senna Proctor coming in early to Team Virtue, because Michael Crease swapped out for Snetterton for his mate Ryan Bensley, and then Virtue couldn't swap Crease back in because that would be the limit of changes for the year. So Proctor ended up getting in a couple of rounds early because this was meant to be when Proctor would come back in. There are also changes to the broadcast. Veteran broadcaster Steve Ryder retired at the end of the Alton Park weekend. So a familiar face for many through the BTC paddock for, well, throughout his 50-year broadcasting career. It's going to be different. I mean, we've also seen changes behind the scenes as well. Lots of the production team is changing around. The lead producer also retired at the end of that event. So there are going to be quite a few changes. Expect that it might come across somewhat seamless. Expect there might be a couple of challenges behind the scenes as there starts to be a new groove. But you might not see a lot of it because, well, these are people who are professionals. You might see that some things are a little bit different, but don't expect, the whole thing to fall apart all of a sudden. Because all of this is a well-oiled machine, and you will see that with the on-track action as well. We have various different support series, and let's go through the schedule now. Starting off on Saturday, you've got free practice at the BTCC at 9:30, and then the free practice for the Legends at 10:20. At 10:45, you've got mini qualifying, and then the first race for the Legends is at 11:30 on Saturday. Now, lots of this you might be able to find at different places online. The BTCC will live stream on YouTube. They're qualifying if you're international, by which I mean not North America or the UK, because North America have their own deal with Racer. You can watch everything for the BTCC on YouTube for free. If you're in the UK, it is on ITV, and for the North American viewers, like I said, Racer is the place you're going to need to go for it. But free practice 2 for the BTCC is at 12 o'clock. Qualifying for the Carrera Cup is at 1:35, and then at 2:20 you have the second Legends race. The first mini race at 2:50. BCC qualifying on the Saturday is at 3:30, and then you have a third race for the Legends at 4:45. Sunday's action will start off with the BTCC at 12:10. The Legends will then be at 12:55. At 1:35 Carrera Cup, 2:30 you will have the BTCC back out. 3:10 the Legends, 3:35 the Minis, 4:15 the Carrera Cup, and then the BTCC at 5:10, and the final Legends race will wrap up the weekend at 5:50. This could change, and we'll get to the forecast in a moment, which could have an impact on it, but largely expect this stuff to stay the same. At the very least, that is linking up with broadcast times, so yeah, What's interesting is you don't get a proper lunch break here. So if there is a delay, it will have a knock-on impact and it will push back future races in the schedule. And expect the weather to have an impact. While Saturday is forecast to mostly be dry, Sunday morning, and especially through the morning itself, is going to have heavy storms. So you can expect that it will clear up around the time of BTCC Race 1, but it could still be that you have a damp track. It could be that you see some wet weather racing. It could be that we see something like Donington 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, wasn't it? When we saw that wet to dry race, and whoever made the correct tyre gamble ended up winning out. People like Nick Hamilton, for example, with Lewis Hamilton watching on. I think that was when Nick Hamilton got his best result, wasn't it, that race? So you could expect tons of disruption to the order, and you could expect strategy to have an impact on race 1. Less likely for races 2 and 3, but definitely for race 1. And especially if it is wet weather, it could mean that any kind of tyre compound gambles that happen this weekend could be impacted as well. Turning the clocks back 12 months, and we did have a qualifying lap record from Tom Chilton. The race lap record, by the way, is still from 2020 with Colin Turkington. That could be beaten this weekend, given the way that the boost system works and the fact that the cars are lighter. But the fact that it stood throughout the hybrid era showed that it potentially is going to be a tough one to beat. But last year, we saw 3 different winners from 3 different manufacturers. Colin Turkington won the first race. He got pole. He got the fastest lap. Josh Cook ended up winning race 2, and race 3 was won by Tom Chilton. So rear-wheel drive BMW, front-wheel drive Toyota, front-wheel drive Hyundai. That doesn't mean that the BMWs weren't competitive elsewhere. Colin Turkington was competitive in race 3, had an incident that basically took him out of the race. Jake Hill had an incident in race 2 that pretty much took him out of the race as well. Fastest lap, by the way, in race 3 went the way of Dan Camish for Ford. So this is a relatively balanced track. Historically, it did favour rear-wheel drive cars. It favoured the BMW because of the launch and the cornering, but the tyre deg late in the race meant the front-wheel drive cars could potentially come back, as long as they didn't wear out their fronts in the early phases of the race. So this square tyre compound offset can also have a big impact, especially in longer races where there are less safety cars, because the harder tyres will come into their own as the mediums drop off. And you do, again, have the front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive disparity. Now, it is already the BMWs that are rear-wheel drive at the moment, but that could still be a factor. It's going to be a fun one anyways. It tends to be quite a balanced track nowadays. You tend to see something go haywire in the first couple of corners for at least one of the races. It's just wonderful. So in terms of the ones to watch, I mean, you can't say Colin Turkington because he's not there this year, and you can't say Josh Cook either because he's not here this weekend either. But you can say put your money on BMW for at least one win. Jake Hill has been good, and the other 3 drivers have all shown different pace this year as well. So it could be that even though these guys are going to be new to the BMW at Croft, it's not just going to be Jake Hill leading the charge because he was good in the BMW last year at Croft. Do expect the Hyundais to be competitive. Do expect them to show fine form. Do expect them to potentially set different kinds of lap records. But at the same time, it could be the case that Toyota perform well. It could be the case that Ford perform well. It could be the case that we end up seeing the Astra up towards the front in at least one of the races too. And with that Hyundai, it could be Restart Racing end up outperforming Virtue at a couple of the points, depending if the strategy ends up going Restart Racing's way. It's very hard to predict for this weekend. Like I said, I think that Croft ended up being one of the more balanced tracks, especially when we look at the potential for a wet and potentially wet to dry race 1. We could see all kinds of things go on. Either way, folks, those are my thoughts, feelings, and observations. Thank you so much for watching and joining, and I hope to see you potentially early next week for a review from the action. Till then, it's bye-bye for now.